The path is always curvy and windy. And so as you build your leadership and your career, say yes to opportunities, even if they seem adjacent to what your core mission is, because they will come together.
Welcome to Climb Higher with Her, a podcast about women and their leadership journeys. I am Darlene Repollet, First Lady of Kean University in New Jersey, and your host. As a former corporate HR executive of 25 years, I have a passion for understanding what makes leaders thrive. We are going to speak with women leaders from government to business and everything in between to hear their stories, share their valuable lessons, and gain actionable wisdom. Today's guest is a trailblazer in the global sustainability movement with a career dedicated to the idea that business can and should be a force for good. Amanda Gardiner has spent over 2 decades navigating the complex intersection of corporate strategy and social impact. From her early days in international development to leading social impact and sustainability for major global firms like Pearson, she has consistently been the architect of programs that bridge the gap between profit and purpose. A graduate of the prestigious Presidential Leadership Scholars Program, Amanda is a champion of values-based leadership and a visionary who understands that the future of business depends on our ability to lead with empathy and integrity. Please welcome a leading voice in the field of sustainability, Amanda Gardiner. Welcome to Climb Higher with Her, Amanda. We're so glad to have you here.
It is such a pleasure to be here on this lovely spring, sunny, hot day.
Yes, that it is. So we are going to start out really trying to understand sort of your journey, right? And Amanda, you've been a leader in sustainability long before it was the hot buzzword in every corporate boardroom. And so can you take us back to the beginning? What was really the catalyst that drew you towards this career path?
Sure. Everyone takes a crazy zigzaggy path to get where they are going. At least many people do. And that's for sure the case with me. I started out wanting to be an opera singer, and I studied music at Ithaca College. And I had this incredible opportunity to study abroad, which I did in Austria because I could go to the opera and still take my lessons.
Wow.
And I fell in love with the culture. I fell in love with being abroad, meeting new people, understanding new languages. And that just got me fascinated with all things foreign affairs. So I did a master's in foreign affairs at Georgetown, and then really started off my career by trying to merge those two aspects of my life thus far. And I found this UN organization based in Paris, who wouldn't want to move to Paris, called UNESCO, the Educational, Cultural Organization, Scientific Organization of the United Nations. And I kind of pestered them until I got a contract role there. And the role was all about cultural industries and how do you reinvigorate those in different developing countries. But my role when I was there was actually talking to companies about how to get involved. And that really opened my eyes to the role that business can play in sustainable development.
Okay.
And got me excited about what is that? What does it mean? What are the different ways they do that? And so I got excited about it. And when I moved shortly after that role to London, I looked and looked for an opportunity to work in that space. And I found one working with one of the then Prince of Wales, now King Charles.
Wow.
He had a suite of charitable endeavors, and one of them was called the International Business Leaders Forum. And it really worked with CEOs and C-suite leaders of large companies with footprints and operations in developing countries to help them consistently improve their business, have a positive impact on communities and the climate and people and so on and so forth. And that's how I started.
There you have it. Wow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I wouldn't have guessed from opera to sustainability, right? But the key in there is that you had this study abroad experience, fell in love with that, being abroad, being in the world, experiencing culture, right?
Yes.
And then intuitively started to look for opportunities to bring together your loves. your interests and your passions. And I also want to go back to your comment of hounding and pestering for a job, because that takes grit and persistence, right? That's not always something that someone is comfortable with. They may feel like, oh, I don't want to bother or what have you. So can you talk about that a little bit more?
Sure. I have a lot of experience of hounding and pestering, especially at the beginning of my career. But that transition when I moved from Paris to London, especially as an American, and by the way, when I initially went to London, I didn't necessarily have a work permit either.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to think about that too.
Okay.
And so I had just finished my graduate degree at my master's degree in foreign affairs at Georgetown. I'd had this experience working at the UN, and I show up in London with no work permit, kind of living on my boyfriend's dime, and needed to make some money. So initially it was working under the table at a bar.
Mm-hmm.
I did hold signs on Oxford Street in London that said golf this way or gym that way. I did aerobics on the mayor's lawn in the middle of the city to open up a new gym. I did things like that. So
wow, that was the hustle.
That was the hustle. And all the time I was thinking, wow, this Georgetown degree is really paying off. But at the same time, I was seeing the city. I used to get off at a different tube station when I could and just wander around and explore. So I was enjoying that and finding where I could drop off copies of my resume, because we still did it in print a lot of the time back then. So I was literally going door to door to places I really wanted to work, to apply for open roles and to put my resume on the desk, quite literally. And that is how I ended up at the IBLF, the International Business Leaders Forum. I actually walked in and left my resume with the receptionist, who happened to have an amazing relationship with the CEO. And we chatted, and I didn't know that at the time, but we had a connection, and he made sure that my resume got to the CEO.
Wow. I love that story just because of the persistence, right? And the attitude that I'm going to do other things that are clearly not related to my degree because I need to survive, but all the while I'm still going to keep my eye on my ultimate goal and what I really want and persist to that. I said it before, that's just a level of grit that is really critical to our success. I want to ask you, in terms of sustainability as a niche, right? So the landscape of sustainability, certainly since you came into it to now, has dramatically shifted. And it's not just a focus in the corporate world anymore. It's really all over. So, for example, even here at Kean, we have a presidential task force for sustainability, and it's focused on all the things I'm sure you would imagine: physical improvements to the campus, research on the environment and environmental justice. Kean was even awarded and recognized for its sustainability efforts by the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Ed.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
How has the conversation, in your eyes, changed from corporate social responsibility kind of as like a side project, if you will, to it being a core recognized business requirement? And what has that evolution taught you about institutional change?
Oh, okay. Let me start, and then you might have to remind me about that second piece, because I think it's important. How has it changed? How has the conversation changed over time? Well, I think you touched on it. 20 years ago and more, it was something that companies did because they thought it made them look good, and they wanted to have an immediate impact on some community or some type of project. Maybe it was the CEO's pet project, their favorite charity that they wanted to impact, but that was what it was all about. And then I think something interesting happened, which is that over time, companies and the leaders inside of them started to realize that those impacts could be greater if they tied them to what the company was good at, what its employees' skills were, what the company made and produced and did, and how they operated on a day-to-day basis, that they could actually, instead of just giving money to a charity that provides food to the homeless, for example, that they could actually show up as, maybe it was an education company, and they could offer their employees as mentors to how to find a job to those people impacted, that they could set up a partnership that ran not only in the geography that one office location was in, but it ran across the country, and that would improve its dealings in the community with all sorts of stakeholders. So I guess what I'm saying is, over time, the business value of doing these things, not just as one-offs, but at scale, started to present itself. And so companies started to do more. And at the same time as that was happening, there was more demand from consumers for companies to be more responsible. And there was more demand from investors for companies to be more responsible. And that's skyrocketed really in the last few years. So it has changed from a conversation about how do we do good because it feels good to how do we do business better to improve our business and improve our customer, community, stakeholder relationships, and just be a better company overall.
Yeah. So do business better while doing good.
Yep. Absolutely.
And that doing good is not just, as you said, something to make you feel a certain way, but that there's actually dollars and cents behind this. And I think that's an important distinction because we know that sustainability is not a profit center, but for companies and leaders to understand that, albeit not a profit center, the concept of sustainability and doing good, as you said, leads to better business, leads to profit because of branding.
Absolutely.
Because of employee talent that wants to come there.
And critically, yes.
And like you said, now in the last several years, investors having a significant interest in what companies are doing.
Absolutely. And many other things. There is a business case for sustainability. The challenge or the opportunity for a good sustainability leader at any given moment is to figure out which business case makes sense and to make that business case in a way that resonates with the leaders running the company. So those are three very good examples. Another company might be trying to enter a new market in a new country, a new place. And doing sustainability there might mean reaching those new markets in different and innovative ways. And those communities might care about sustainability. And so how do you innovate in a way that's sustainable to reach those new markets? There are so many ways to make the business case, but making it is important. It is wonderful to feel good about doing these things. And if that's a motivator enough, wonderful. But what has often happened is when times get tough, the pennies get pinched. I shouldn't say that anymore. There are no pennies anymore. I just realized that. But you know what I'm saying. When when wallets are tightened, often what goes are the feel good, no business impact or no additional value perceived projects. And so how to make them business relevant and feel good, if we can do that at the same time, is really critical.
Yeah. And that's the difference between what a leader does, especially in this space, is understanding how to make that business case. So I did want to ask you about the evolution, right? What it taught you to see that institutional change and your influence. I mean, your influence is as a change agent. So talk to me about that a little bit.
So I do think that the core skill that a sustainability officer has and has to implement is influencing without authority, because often you are doing this inside of companies with small teams. You are not part of any given team, but a separate team. Now that's changing a little bit in terms of how companies structure this, but there's been a sustainability team. And that team has to really influence the other leaders in the other functions to make the changes that we're trying to drive. And so that means building very strong and strategic relationships before you need them, before there's an ask, I want you to change something. How do you make friends and build strong relationships with people that you will need as assets to make change in the company? It's about what we talked about before, translating sustainability into business value and business language. It's about using data and storytelling effectively to get what you need. And I think really critically, it's also about letting others take credit. Quite frankly, sometimes you have to be humble in this space and know that if you're making a big ask for somebody to take a risk, do something new in the way that they run their team or run their business, you also need to share when it goes right and let them take credit. And so a big job is stepping back from always needing to say, I did this.
Yeah.
And letting other people take credit.
So what I love about that is we are talking specifically about your expertise in sustainability, but everything you just said in terms of influencing institutional change, being a change agent, is not just about sustainability. That is about a whole host of other topics that an individual may want to influence within an organization. And so all of those strategies and key points that you just listed for us are completely applicable regardless.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's sustainability, whether it's, I don't know, we want to impact anything within the organization and any changes, right? Goals that don't exist today. You know, I'm new in the company. I have an idea of something that I see we could do differently. Well, you just can't go in there like a ram and, you know, knock things over and bull in a china shop and institute change like that, because typically that's not going to be received very well. But your strategy about, hey, build your network, build the relationships, have data, have metrics.
Yes.
All of that to influence.
Absolutely. And it's completely transferable to all other areas of the institution, which goes to your question. I think overall, sustainability, like many other functions in a business or an organization more broadly, needs to be a strategic function. And it's taught me through this work that patience is important, that you want to change 100% of the things 100% of the time. But as a leader, if it's often like turning a giant ship. And if you can just turn it a little bit at a time and wait.
Yes.
Oftentimes what will happen is over time, you can turn it a little bit more. And so you have to be very patient, and you have to understand that every no means not yet.
Yeah.
Not ready. Please step back and come to me another time, or I'll come to you.
Yeah.
And that could be very frustrating, especially for somebody type A, which I can be.
Yes.
So it's something that I've had to practice, and it's something that I didn't start out being good at, and I may not be the best at, but I think as a sustainability leader and as leaders, we are always having to get better at that aspect.
Yeah. The patience piece.
That patience piece.
Patience, but persistence.
Patience, but persistence, and with the long-term goal in mind. Understanding, you know, people do things a certain way for their reasons. And so you have to really understand what those reasons are and learn to appreciate them in order to find the right levers to change them.
Yes.
And maybe you won't find the right levers. Maybe there won't be change. So how do you pivot and try something new? And maybe that will unlock after years in some time, in some cases. Maybe that will unlock the changes you initially tried. Maybe you'll find that your changes weren't the right changes you were trying to drive. But it's about that patience, willingness to listen, empathize with the people you're trying to work with, pivot when needed, and come back to things.
All right. So I know, in addition to everything we just talked about, you are a firm believer in values-based leadership. So, you know, in a high-stakes corporate world where the bottom line, like we already alluded to, is often what speaks the loudest, right? The profit, the numbers. Yeah. Why does leading with a clear set of values make a leader more effective than just, you know, oh, that's a nice person? What's the business case for values-based leadership?
Yeah. So when I talk about values-based leadership, for me, it's about aligning what a company says it stands for with how it behaves and the decisions that it makes, particularly when times get tough, when there are trade-offs to be made between having a particular impact on a community, for example, and having to pay more, just as one example, or meet payroll. What do you do? So why does that matter? I mean, I think it matters more than ever because I think, first of all, employees want to work for companies that are aligned with their beliefs and their values.
Yeah.
It drives talent. People want to work somewhere where they're proud. I mean, that's it. The other thing is it builds trust with stakeholders, customers, investors. We've talked about some of them, which especially these days with AI and social media and everything online, it's much easier to lose trust and much harder to win it.
Yes.
So that matters. And I think really importantly, it also helps companies manage long-term risks. If you know what you stand for as a company, if you've thought through, we stand for climate, we stand for communities, we stand for this type of impact, it is much easier to manage that risk in the long term because you know where you're starting from. So it helps manage those risks. And I think sustainability, is one of the clearest expressions of values-based leadership because it's where companies decide how they show up on these issues. It's, issues around climate and equity and impact. And it's not just the words that they put on paper or the values that they write down on their mission statement, but it's what they do in their operations and the impacts that they have and report back on.
And isn't that so critical because we've seen examples where an organization may say one thing, but like you said, their actions don't match. And in recent years, companies are actually called to task on that. And there and again, impact to the bottom line. So like you said, understanding as an organization, well, what really are our core values and holding true to those builds that trust, as you said. And in the example, if the two don't match, then the trust erodes. Now, isn't this true? We've been talking overall for an organization, but isn't this true for us as individuals as well?
Absolutely. It is very true for us. It's what I tell my kids. It's, when the lights go off and no one is looking, who are you? What do you stand for? Where are your boundaries? What are the things you'll do and you won't do?
Yes.
And it's that kind of leadership, bringing that into the workplace and deciding as the CEO or part of the board, what are my boundaries? What am I going to do when people aren't looking? And how am I going to behave? If we have a set of values and we do something different that's contrary to those, what does that mean? I think, back to the beginning when you asked what's changed in this field, I mean, the internet as technology exposes a lot of the things that never used to get exposed.
Right.
So the risks are real for doing that these days.
Absolutely. And it spreads like wildfire too.
It does.
Courtesy of, the internet and social media. So you have been previously a part of a very prestigious program, the Presidential Leadership Scholars Program, and that was a significant milestone, I know, in your career and just the sheer opportunity to be selected for that and participate in it. Can you briefly tell us a little bit about what that program is and the importance? And I want to talk about the importance because why does it matter for people to go to development programs like that? And then what do you do after that you've been to such a program?
Okay. So the Presidential Leadership Scholars Program was pivotal for me in my leadership journey, and it was very recent. I did it in 2023.
Okay.
It's essentially a program for mid-career professionals, and it brings together a cohort of 60 people each year to meet 6 times over 6 months, typically at a presidential library, and learn about leadership through the lessons and the eyes of 4 previous presidents, Bush Jr., Bush Sr., Clinton, and Lyndon Johnson. And there is a definite academically oriented or theoretically oriented piece of that where we have some classroom instruction. But the value is really in the cohort that's brought together and the diversity of that cohort, both in terms of geography, political views, racial and ethnic diversity, gender diversity. Just they do a lot of work at the front end through the application and interview process to make sure the cohort is a cohort that is sufficiently diverse, but will also gel very well together.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really about the discussions that emanate from that cohort and that we're facilitated through over the course of our meetings. Fundamentally, for me, it was about how do you partner with people who have very different views in order to make an impact that benefits everybody. And even if your vision of impact is different, how do you arrive at a pathway that can get you there? How do you work through differences and have civil discourse, especially in this day and age, in order to really drive changes that we need in the world? And so that for me to be part of, or, one of 60 people who are doing incredible things in their communities and want to drive impact, to come together and be part of the conversations with those people was just incredibly inspiring for me. Why do it, especially at this point in my career? And why should anyone? I really believe, especially having done the program, there was a lot of excitement around it. I was very interested in the content that we learned, the president.
Mm-hmm.
We learned about the presidents. I was excited about meeting people. But I think fundamentally what I learned and probably came in wanting to learn was, how do I take time to step back from my day-to-day as a leader, pause and reflect on how I lead, how I work, what's important to me, in order to move forward in the rest of my career stronger as a leader and able to give that gift to others. And so I really did find that it was incredibly important to meet. We physically met in a different state once every 6 months, and you were out of work.
Mm-hmm.
You took yourself right out of there. You stopped answering your emails. They encouraged us to take up the phone, and it was you checked out and had your eyes open, almost back to the London experience, it was my study abroad experience where I just loved learning about the world, and that opened my eyes. Well, it opened my eyes to new people working in new domains and professional fields, to new political beliefs, to new types of thinking, to new ways of solving challenges that were not directly, it seemed to be applicable in my field, but that I could extract those lessons and take them back with me. So important.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying from that experience is, number one, the Presidential Leadership Scholars Program, specifically that notion of civil discourse. How do we have conversations with individuals that we know we might not have the same point of view, but we need to achieve something? So how can we get there? How can we have conversations that allow us to get wherever there is? To the opportunity to just meet so many different people across the U.S. in so many different career fields, levels of expertise, and being able to truly gel as a cohort. I know when you talked to me about this before, you said you're still friends with most of them today.
Yes.
And go and visit them when you're in, traveling to certain states or what have you.
Yes.
To learning the importance of taking time to sit back, reflect, and think. Because a lot of times as employees and leaders, we're just go, go, go. What's the next thing? Okay, what's the next meeting on the calendar? What's the next project we need to work on? But we often don't have time to think. And it's so important to be able to do that. So the fact that you were able to get that out of the program is really interesting to me. And I wanted to ask you about that because I wanted to encourage our listeners, right? Like, it might not be the Presidential Leadership Scholars Program, or maybe it will be, but there are so many developmental programs in all career fields that we should encourage one another to take advantage of those and to attend those and really be intentional about how what we learn in those programs, how we're going to apply that to our everyday jobs when we get back on Monday morning or whatever it is, right? And not just be at a conference or be at a program and then 30 days later say, wow, I know I wanted to do something that I heard about from that program, but I didn't do it.
Didn't follow up.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that in terms of the importance. And so, you've really taken us along your journey. And so thank you for sharing your stories and your path and how you got to where you are and how you have become such a change agent and an influence specifically in sustainability. But we know that all of the things that you just shared with us are applicable for everyone, whether they're in sustainability or not.
Absolutely.
And so I want to transition into kind of our last phase of our podcast, which is called the Climb Higher with Her Rapid Fire Round.
Okay.
So, and I laugh every time because when I say this, every guest laughs. And so it's a series of questions, and I want you to respond with just the first thing that comes to mind. Okay. So question 1. What is your favorite way to unplug from a connected world?
Playing pickleball.
Oh, pickleball.
Yes, I'm addicted. I'm one of those people
You're
that
one of
started,
those?
and then I can't stop. I play almost every day. It's so
Really?
embarrassing. Yes.
Well, that's not embarrassing.
It's embarrassing because I even tell pickleballers how often I play, and they're like, really? Don't you have a big job? I'm like, I squeeze it in.
Well, that's good. But see, that shows that you're doing something you love every day.
Yeah.
And experts say that we should find time to do something that we love every day, even if it is only for a few minutes. So kudos to you for that. All right. Second question. Coffee, tea, or water?
Coffee.
Coffee.
I
Gotta
have to
have it.
force myself to drink water. I love coffee. I don't drink too much, but it goes down very easily. Water for me is difficult.
Okay. All right. The mountains or the beach?
The mountains.
I kind of figured you might say that.
I'm a mountains girl. I was just in the mountains. I took my kids out west for spring break, and we did some of the national parks, and we went e-biking in the mountains. It was great.
Awesome. All right, here's another one. If you could put one message on a billboard for every CEO to see, what would it be?
Oh my gosh.
I know that's not an easy one. I'm sorry.
That is really hard, and I'm going to come up with something very cheesy and bad. I'm going to try my best here.
Okay.
Do it because it makes good business sense.
Very good. I love it.
And by it would be implied sustainability.
Yes. Yes. All right. Last rapid fire question. And this is a nod to your musical background. I mean, we didn't have a chance to really do the deep dive on that. Opera. I know you're in a rock band. So I have to ask, what is your hype song before a big presentation?
Oh, okay. I don't really have a hype song before presentations. I don't do that, but I should.
Okay.
Now I feel like I should. I'm going to translate that to what my son always asks me, which I still don't have a great answer to, but it's what's your walkout baseball song? That's how he thinks.
Uh-huh.
And he's got a few picked out, and I'm always like, I really like It Takes Two. It Takes Two.
Oh, yeah. By Rob Bass.
Which is super.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I love it. That's one of my favorite songs too. I really like that song.
Old school, a little old school.
Yeah. Okay. So Amanda, again, thank you for sharing with us, for being here today. And I wanted to ask you one last question. What would you say is your biggest takeaway for our listeners from today's conversation?
Biggest takeaway? I think there's a few. I think, first of all, the path is always curvy and windy. And so as you build your leadership and your career, say yes to opportunities, even if they seem adjacent to what your core mission is.
Yeah.
Because they will come together. you will make them come together in the end, and you find lessons in everything that you do that you can apply in other areas. I think we've covered that a lot actually in this conversation.
Yes.
So take the windy path and don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of the left field curveballs. Wow, I'm doing a lot of baseball references.
Your son will be pleased.
My son will be so happy. The curveballs are what makes it exciting and kind of takes you down paths and opens your eyes to things you didn't think about before.
Awesome. All right, audience, you've heard it. So, on Climb Higher with Her, we often obviously talk about the climb, but you've reminded us today that the view from the top, and even as we are climbing, only matters if your values are still intact. You've proven that sustainability isn't just a corporate department, it's a leadership mindset. Thank you for sharing your story and for showing us that when a leader chooses purpose over just profit, the possibilities are endless. We are so glad you could join us today and help us to climb higher. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you for listening to Climb Higher with Her, a podcast produced by Kean, a proud research university. Subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. For more information, visit kean.edu/climb higher with her.